We have reached the first major milestone of the 2026 MLB season, and not only are your Cleveland Guardians in first place, they're the second best team in the American League, the fourth best team in Major League Baseball, and they're only getting better.
Tanner Bibee of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Guardians only scored 4 runs in Philadelphia over the weekend. They come home with 2 wins, 2 exciting wins on Memorial Day weekend. The first time you can really seriously look at the standings, although we can debate that a little bit in Major League Baseball, and they are in an incredibly good spot. You are here on Locked On Guardians. We appreciate you being here, your only daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. It'll mostly be a Phillies-related Guardians weekend here, but we'll get into the move on from Peyton Palette and why that was made and what's next for them. I want to talk about the lineup a little bit and ask where a certain first baseman was this weekend. We'll get into leadoff man Travis Bazzana. We start off the episode today talking about why the Guardians continue to put such an emphasis on starting pitching, and you saw it on display in Philadelphia. I'm Justin Lada, your host for today's show. Jeff is taking the day off, so let him have a deserved day off. But I've been here with Jeff for the last 4 years, and I've been covering the Guardians minor league system for 19 years. And today's episode of Locked On Guardians brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. I think it's a miracle in the first place, by the way, that the Guardians even played all 3 games in Philadelphia this weekend, given the forecast. It was rainy. It was chilly on Friday night in Philadelphia. Not a good night for hitting, although you could also argue probably not a great night for pitching either, for being honest, in terms of being able to grip the ball. Chilly and windy or rainy. And that's a very hard ballpark to pitch in. Citizens Bank Ballpark is a bandbox, and Philadelphia Philly fans are loud, they're rabid, they're passionate. It's a tough ballpark to play in overall. Saturday, they had the 2-hour rain delay, obviously, and the conditions weren't much better. Sunday, still a little bit chilly in Philadelphia for Memorial Day weekend, no less. But the game was dry, and it was played without any rain and it had any delays, which is nice. And thank goodness it did, because it was a great weekend of baseball for the Guardians. It doesn't matter what the weather looked like, honestly. It was great baseball all weekend long for the Guardians. And it was a great weekend if you really love pitchers' duels, which I really do. I know there's a lot of fans out there who really like to watch games where it's, 8-7 or whatever, or see teams score 10 runs. I love offense too. I love a big home run, but I love big home runs and big hits when it's 1-0 or 2-1 and the game ends 4-2. Like, that's probably where my threshold is. I like a good close game. I like pitchers doing well. I don't want to see guys come in and not get outs and walk batters and hitters just hitting the ball all over the yard. Sometimes that's fun, I suppose, but really, I think most games are more fun when pitchers are out there dominating, and that makes, when you get a base runner on, I know that makes the games kind of, born with action, but I love a strikeout. I love good defense. And when those hits come in and they're, clutch and they're a big part of the game in terms of where it's at and the intensity in the big moments, I love that. And that's what this weekend really was in Philadelphia. Cristopher Sanchez, I think, is got to be the all-star starting pitcher. I know, Paul Skeens has really fallen off the last couple of days. I don't know what's going on there. I'm sure he'll be just fine, but I think the National League starting pitcher for the all-star game has to be Cristopher Sanchez. I mean, he is incredible this year, and he was really nasty on Friday night. He had the Guardians eating out of his hand on the slider, the changeup, really not shocked by that, right? It was an ugly, ugly game. But Gavin Williams brought his A game. I would say that might have been the best start of Gavin Williams' career. He did really well against the Dodgers earlier this year, which is a really tough lineup in LA. That was an important game. They won. By the way, they took 2 or 3 in that series, just saying. I know he had the near no-hitter against the Mets last year, but Gavin Williams, 11 strikeouts and no walks in 8 innings in a game where he couldn't afford to make a mistake because Cristopher Sanchez wasn't making mistakes. Now, he had 2 walks on the same amount of hits as Gavin Williams. So Gavin Williams outpitched the guy who I think is going to start the All-Star game for the NL and easily is in the Cy Young contender conversation out there. That was A+ Gavin Williams. And you get him on a roll, it's going to get really fun. And then Kyle Manzardo gets the clutch. That's what I'm saying. No runs for 8 innings, and you bring a hitter off the bench who didn't start because of Sanchez being the lefty, very tough lefty. No surprise there. Nobody had really done a great job. David Fry had 2 hits, but comes up in the 9th inning. And by the way, does something that you have never seen if you're a Guardians fan. That is the first time in Cleveland baseball history. We're talking, 125 years now? Back in 1901 is when this whole thing started. Cleveland has never had a hitter come up as a pinch hitter, hit a home run to give them the lead in the 9th inning. They won a game. It never has happened in a game where there was it was the only run of the game. So you saw history. You saw something you've never seen before if you're a Cleveland fan. So Manzardo hits that game-winning home run. Cade Smith comes in, locks it up on 8 pitches. Love to see that. That was a really fun start to a holiday weekend where the Guardians are playing well, and we know that Memorial Day is kind of the Old Testament as far as when you can quote-unquote check the standings. I know our pal Sully at MLB, Locked at MLB, will talk about the Summer Fun Index or whatever it's called, where he talks about how many days a team spends in the playoff race and who gave their team a fun summer or gave their fans a fun summer. He kind of starts that on Memorial Day. I would argue you push that back a little bit because you've got wild cards and extra teams that are in the hunt. So maybe we push that back to middle of June. I don't know. Hard to say. Maybe even end of June now. But we're still at the first tent pole of the Major League Baseball season, and the Guardians are getting better. Now, obviously, Gavin Williams was super Gavin Williams on Sunday, and that's the guy, who we know can step up in big moments. And they lost on Saturday. They didn't get any hits, right? The offense was great Monday in Detroit off Framber Valdez, which normally it hasn't been. And you've seen some guys kind of struggle, right? Jose had a great time in Detroit because he usually does. Had a rough weekend in Philadelphia. Chase DeLauder, outside of, some walks, has really struggled. Daniel Schneemann has come back to earth this month, although he's still close to average. Same with Angel. Stephen Kwan's been up and down. Travis Bazzana, we'll talk about him in a little bit, has been great. But Slade, so the offense, didn't do as well the rest of the series against the Tigers. Did enough. And it did enough this weekend in Philadelphia. It didn't do anything on Saturday against Zach Wheeler, who still is really good, by the way, which it's a freaky thing that he's good because he's 35 years old. He had a rib removed because of the thoracic outlet syndrome, which a lot of guys don't come back from. So for him to come back from that injury and that surgery, let alone at 35 and be as good as he was before, is ridiculous. So, tip your cap on that one. But Slade Cecconi was good Saturday, legitimately good. I think if you looked at the box scores from the last several weeks, and I think the last 3 starts for Cecconi have been really good. So if you would have said, hey, going to go to Philadelphia, going to give up 3 runs in 5 innings with 5 strikeouts and 1 walk, I think you would take that because he's legitimately had a very tough year. The ERA is still over 5. But the last 3 starts for Cecconi have been really, really good. And in the month of May overall, he has been pretty darn good. A 4 ERA, a 3.68 FIP. That is more like the 4-5 starter that Slade Cecconi kind of can be and is. And, he's not Gavin Williams. He's not Parker Messick. He's not even Tanner Bibee, but he's, he doesn't have I don't know if he has the upside of Joey Cantillo. And Joey Cantillo's had an up and down month of May. I hate to put ceilings on guys because I think Cecconi is still figuring things out. I don't want to sit here and say this is who he is because there are things he's still working on. But he pitched good on Saturday, I thought, really. He had a really good fastball going for him, which normally hasn't been. And not surprisingly here, with a new catcher, and I will say Cecconi did pitch to Bo Naylor in his last game in the majors before he got demoted, and he was good in Kansas City. But Slade Cecconi, up the sinker usage once again. Cut down the four seam usage once again. Curveball still really there, still an effective pitch for him. And also, we saw 7 changeups. He has not thrown that many changeups this year. Wasn't necessarily an effective pitch, got 1 whiff. Guys didn't really hit it hard, which is good. I think that's the point of it. It's not something he throws all the time, but it's something he can throw to give guys a different look, especially left-handers, who he struggles with. So he's still evolving his pitch mix, and I do think that's helping out as it moves along with Austin Hedges catching him or Patrick Bailey. The Guardians put an emphasis on starting pitching for a reason. You saw Gavin on Friday. We've seen him go through his struggles, right, with the walks and being madly inconsistent. But he was great, and that's what they wanted out of him, and that's what they knew was in there. They identified that. Same with Slade Cecconi when they traded for him. They identified this. Parker Messick, when they drafted him, I've been high on Parker Messick for a couple of years. Clearly, the Guardians knew better that he was better. A lot of people thought he was better than I did. Starting pitching still matters for this team. We'll talk more about that next. The impact of Travis Bazzana finally hitting leadoff. Where in the world is Kyle Manzardo? And we'll get to cutting bait on Peyton Palette. That's coming up next. The NBA playoffs are here. Someone should tell the Cavs they haven't stopped because every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That is right. You can turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started with FanDuel. If you want to continue to depress yourself, the Cavs are 2.5-point underdogs on Memorial Day. It's for the season to end. But if you want to be a little more happy, the Guardians are favored by 1.5 runs on Monday, Memorial Day. It is Tanner Bibee pitching, so you are right to be concerned with the lack of offense. But I'll say this, Zach Littell, not a good starter for the Nationals. The weather is going to be good in Cleveland on Monday. I like Tanner Bibee in this one. He's pitching better. I also like the over at 8.5 because the weather, and I just think that Tanner's due for a lot of offense. Let's go over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Get your daily coverage of Cleveland baseball completely ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today. You can start your 7-day free trial now. Get close to your team without any interruptions. You can check out the Discord where Jeff and I are chatting with other fans of the show, other listeners, as well as fans of the Guardians and other teams and other hosts as well. You can click on the link in the show notes or go to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com to claim your free trial. Check all that out. So I said before, the Guardians, this is why the last, I guess we'll go back further than a decade now. We didn't start calling it the pitching factory a decade ago, but it is the pitching factory now. And this is, you can see this is why the Guardians still place such an importance on having a good pitching. I know a lot of years it's very frustrating for people to say they can't score. And I agree. They have to be better offensively. They've got to be better offensive development. They've got to be better at identifying. They've got to be better at trading. Everything offensively. You can't expect your team to make the playoffs, even though they did in 2025, made the playoffs with literally the worst offense in baseball. And it showed by getting knocked out in the first round, even though they had some clutch hits late. But it's pitching. What led the Guardians to the playoffs last year? Yes, it was Detroit falling on its face at the end of the year, which they continue to embarrass themselves again this year with Kenley Jansen blowing a save in Baltimore, and things continue to get worse for them. But the Guardians came back last year because their 6-man rotation with Bibee, Williams, Cecconi, and they had Allen up, and Cantillo was just incredible. And this year it's the same thing. The month of May, the Guardians pitching staff has been absolutely on a tear. I mean, they only gave up Parker, I don't think, gave up a single run in this game. No, Parker wasn't responsible for run. So Slade Cecconi gave the only 3 runs this weekend. He pitched really well, I thought. The month of May, if you want to go to team stats, just for starting pitching in the month of May, and this is not going to include Parker Messick's start, but the Guardians pitching staff in the month of May has a 3.65 ERA. That's going to go down. Their FIP is 3.73. That's going to, I think, go down because Parker was pretty good with his walks. If you like pitcher wins, they're 10-6. That means they're scoring enough offense with their starters in the game to win, minus Tanner Bibee, because we know they can't score runs while he's pitching. So if you like that stat too, that in that context, they're doing good. 7th in the league in pitcher WAR, starting pitcher WAR at 2.2, behind the Philadelphia Phillies, by the way, who pitched very well this weekend too. So the Guardians scored 4 runs all weekend. The Phillies scored 4 runs all weekend, and the Guardians are coming home with 2 wins because Parker, I would say Parker probably wasn't. I think Parker would tell you too, he wasn't at his best on Sunday. He threw 91 pitches in 6 innings, which is a little high, and he had 2 walks. He was getting behind some hitters, but he was really good when it mattered. I thought he only really gave up, a lot of hits to, Garcia had a double, Schwarber had a double. Other than that and the 2 walks, I thought he was really, really dominant all day long. And it showed in the box score obviously. And that's why you bring in guys like Patrick Bailey. Like, I know Jeff says that, like, I mean, and I agree, like, clearly Bo Naylor would still be the catcher today if Patrick Bailey wasn't available. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's true. I don't think they were looking as much to replace Bo as it became Patrick Bailey was available and they really liked him. But the reason that they really liked him is because they knew he could take their pitching staff to another level. So that's the emphasis on pitching. Like, yes, the offense is better this year. The offense scored 10 runs against the Tigers, against Framber Valdez, like I said, who they haven't done that very often. But what's important for this team to have is good starting pitching, and the bullpen obviously has come back to life too in the month of May, I would say. Starting pitching is going to carry you through a lot more games than hitting is, no matter who you are, especially in the playoffs. We'll see what happens there. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse on that one, but you need starting pitching when your offense slumps. That's always going to happen. You're going to be lucky if you have 3 or 4 guys in a lineup at any given time who are really, really clicking. And right now, you know, the Guardians may not necessarily have that in their lineup right now. The month of May, I would say it's been much better, obviously, because the offense has improved with calling up guys like Bazana. And their worst hitters are essentially bench players and a guy you don't expect the offense from, Patrick Bailey, and Kwan's been terrible this month. But you're not going to have all those guys going at once. But the reason the Guardians are 16-7 this month is because their offense has been better. But their pitching was able to match the Phillies pitching this weekend, and they did more than the Phillies offense, who is struggling. There are some guys in the lineup that are really struggling. So that is why you still see this team place that importance on pitching. That's why it's important for them to have guys like Patrick Bailey and Austin Hedges to help elevate that staff. Let's move out of the lineup. Travis Bazzana finally on Saturday put into the leadoff spot. It is long overdue for as many games as he's been up. It is overdue. I think we can all agree it was still overdue. Only had the one hit on Saturday because nobody was hitting Zach Wheeler or the Phillies bullpen. They had their best 3 relievers out of the bullpen. By the way, Kyle Manzardo, I want to point this out, his home run off Johan Duran on Friday, who the Guardians have loved to use as a punching bag the last couple of years of the Twins. First home run he had allowed all season. So not only you saw that, and you saw the first go-ahead home run pinch hit that was the only run of the game that gave the Guardians a win in franchise history. You saw that too. So Bazana doubles in his only hit on Saturday as the leadoff guy. And then Sunday, by the way, 3 for 4 with an RBI. And oh, by the way, the RBI in that game, the home run that put them back up 3-1, a monster home run. And what did we talk about for Bazana in college, the scouting reports? It was, well, do we know if he's going to hit velocity? Because he didn't face a lot of guys in college with great velocity. And that was one of those things you couldn't really gauge fairly at the time because you just hadn't seen it. You couldn't sit there and say, well, he really struggled against Hagen Smith of Arkansas, who dominated. And yes, Hagen Smith was great against Travis Bazzan in 2024. Parker Messick was also great against Chase DeLauder in 2023, by the way. Do you want to give back Chase DeLauder? Is because he didn't do well against Parker Messick? No, you have both. You have both. You have your cake and you eat it too. Travis Bazzana turned around a 97-mile-an-hour fastball for a 105-mile-an-hour home run that went 412 feet. Inside fastball that he absolutely demolished. And let's be fair. Let's be grounded and level here and say Chase DeLauder has kind of hit, a little bit of a slump here. He's still hitting really well in May. But over the last, I would say, 7 games, over the last 7 games, not including Sunday where he didn't do well except for a walk, he's hitting a .192, 253, 46 for a 68 WRC plus. He had 1 walk on Sunday. So DeLauder has played the most games he's ever played in his career. Not really a shock that he's hitting, having a little bit of a mini slump here. And pitchers are going to figure him out. Pitchers are going to figure out Travis Bazzana too. Like, he should have never gotten that fastball in on the hands the way he did from Jonathan Bolin. But he did. He turned it around. He cranked it for a lot of people who said, Travis Bazzana, too small, not going in for any power. I think you're wrong. And again, like I said, Bazzana is going to have slumps. I mean, God, he started his career in a slump. He was over 12. He was over 12 to start his career, and he still had a ton of walks. And that's why Chase DeLauder is still valuable, because he walks even when he doesn't hit. But just going to point this out. with Travis Bazzana, being 100, I think he's 100 plate appearances into his big league career now. Yes, exactly 100 plate appearances now. Charlie Condon is still in the minors. Connor Griffin is struggling, even though he's only 20 years old. Chase Burns, he looks great. Jack Caglione, very average so far. Nick Kurtz was not in the conversation at 1-1 as much as I wanted him to be. You guys know how I feel about him if you listen to the show. Still a very good player. Love that guy. Travis Bazzana, looking pretty good. And he's up, less than 2 years after his draft date. So for those who said he was not the right pick there, again, it's only 100 plate appearances. Things can change, and he's definitely going to slump a little bit. Things look pretty good. And he's in the leadoff spot, and I don't think he's giving it back anytime soon. Let's talk about another hitter who wasn't in the lineup as much this weekend, to some surprises. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the move on from Peyton Palette, the Rule 5 pick from this year, and we'll look ahead a little bit to the series this week against the Washington Nationals. I want to thank everybody who's hanging out here on the show and making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. Truthfully, Jeff took the day off because on Memorial Day, most holidays within Locked On, I will say, is not like a must record. It's not a must record. It's a nice to have if you have the availability to do so, which I did. And I'll be honest, I wanted to get on here and talk about the series this weekend because it was a fun weekend of baseball, and the Guardians are still playing well. Again, they are the fourth best team in the major leagues. They are the second best team in the American League. Look at all these teams, by the way, that have 30 wins or more wins than the Guardians. You have the Dodgers, who have one more win than the Guardians, but 6 times the payroll? And I'm not going to make this a payroll conversation, but the Braves, 36 wins. We know what they look like. They crushed the Guardians, right? 4 more wins than the Guardians. The Rays have 2 more wins than the Guardians. They're the best team in the American League. We know where their payroll sits. They also had a good week against the Guardians, too. And the Yankees are the only other team in the AL with 30-plus wins at 31. You can say where their payroll is. And the only team that has a chance to break into the 30-win mark in the AL are the Athletics, who lead the West at 27-26. It's going to take 3 days of wins for them to crack the 30-win mark. So at least for 3 days, nobody else is going to have 30 wins in the American League by Memorial Day. And we talked about the AL Central not being a good division. Well, look, there's only 2 teams above 500 in the East. There's only 1 team above 500 in the West. It isn't just the AL Central. The entire American League right now is wide open. It's not great. The Twins right now are a playoff team in the American League. They're 26-27. They are the last wild card spot. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Here's another thing I want to talk about over the weekend. Kyle Manzardo had the go-ahead home run in the 9th inning against Philadelphia. Not in the lineup on Friday because of Christopher Sanchez. No shock there. Not really shocked at all. Not in the lineup. Or he did hit Saturday. He was 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. But again, Zach Wheeler is tough on everybody. Zach Wheeler is a really good pitcher, and he's a freak for coming back from that injury. And then no Kyle Manzardo on Sunday. Now, Rhys Hoskins did have a big RBI double in this game and then got thrown out at third because why not? That was goofy. I will say, I didn't point this out in the first segment, but the base running on Sunday sure tried to give that game back. Schneemann did not run the base as well. Hoskins didn't run the base as well. It was not a good week, a good day for base running. They tried very hard to give up every inch of that lead. And by the way, the bullpen, Colin Holderman, kind of surprised he only got 1 out, but got a big out in the 6th inning. Tim Herron continues to struggle. And I know a lot of people were concerned about Eric Zabrowski. I don't know this for sure, but I don't think anything's wrong. He's pitched a ton this year. So he pitched on Tuesday. And he pitched on Wednesday, back-to-back days. Didn't pitch Thursday. They gave him the day off because nobody goes 3 days in a row. You didn't need him Friday because Gavin handed the ball straight to Cade Smith. You weren't going to use him Saturday because of the deficit. They weren't going to bring him into a game where you were losing by 3 runs. And they went to Herron, which was kind of surprising. I thought maybe they were saving Sobrowski for the 8th inning, but instead they went to Hunter Gaddis after Herron was struggling, and Hunter Gaddis got you 4 big outs in this one. And that's something else I want to point out too, is Hunter Gaddis all of a sudden looking pretty good. The changeup's still not where you'd like it to be. It was a very non-competitive pitch for him on Sunday. He threw 4 of them and not a strike, not a whiff, nothing. I don't think even a foul ball, so no teams even offered at it. So I think he did get a foul on it, actually, so I guess that's good. But the slider is great. The fastball, he's got back a little bit. The slider's been really good for him, though. If this bullpen gets Hunter Gaddis back to being anywhere close to the good version of Hunter Gaddis, think of how deep this roster is going to be. Because you got Sobrowski, you have, Armstrong looked a little bit better against Detroit. And then he also was very good against Philadelphia. Then you got Holderman, who's been great. And then at some point, you'll have guys like Franco Alamon and possibly Andrew Walters and maybe Daniel Espino. Cody Hoyer has been really good. This bullpen's in amazing shape. Knock on wood, anything can happen. So Kyle Manzardo, though, didn't play on Sunday. I know I just transitioned from the bullpen and the lineup, so we're kind of bouncing all over the place today. But it's kind of a bonus show, so just happy to be here talking Guardians anyway. But no Kyle Manzardo on Sunday either against Andrew Painter. I thought that was strange. I thought that was very, very strange because Kyle Manzardo in the month of May has really turned things around. He is hitting 278, 350, 574 in the month of May. Now, he does have a 30% strikeout rate, but he has 4 home runs. He has as many home runs as Angel Martinez in the month of May. He has the highest WRC plus in the team in the month of May, even higher than Bazzana and Rocchio have been great. So kind of strange that Manzardo didn't start 2 games this weekend. He pinch hit on Friday, which isn't a surprise. Struggled Saturday, and then they got. I guess the only reason he didn't play is because they had the DH Jose for his traditional Sunday DH session, and they decided to play Rhys Hoskins at first. I don't know if that was just because they liked the matchup or it was Philadelphia and they wanted him to play all 3 games against the Phillies, his former team. I don't know. He got a nice ovation, and Rhys Hoskins has been good this month. He's hitting 159, but he's got a 328 OBP and a 432 slugging for a 111 WRC plus, not including his double on Sunday. So it's not as if Rhys Hoskins is a bad choice right now. I mean, again, the only guys on this offense in the month of May who are really not giving you anything are Stephen Kwan, Patrick Bailey, Daniel Schneeman's at a 19. We probably should have a conversation about that. And then Petey Halpin. But 2 of those 4 guys you don't expect offense from. Bailey, and then Halpin's a bench guy. The other 2 you need better offense from. The offense is in a good spot, so it's not a big deal. But kind of weird, Manzardo didn't play a ton this weekend, at least Saturday and Sunday. He did play Saturday, but he didn't play Sunday, so that was a weird instance for sure. So the Guardians did cut bait on Peyton Palette over the weekend. So here's what happens now for people who aren't necessarily familiar with the process. So he's a Rule 5 pick. He has been designated for assignment. He does have to be offered back to the White Sox first. What will happen is he will go through the waivers process. So it's the same as any time a player gets DFA'd. Any team can claim him, and it goes in reverse order of record, I believe, at this time of year. So all the worst teams, let's see who has the worst record in the AL. The Angels could claim him. The Tigers are next with the next worst record, by the way. They could claim him, which I wouldn't be shocked by, I guess, because the Tigers could use some bullpen help. And in the NL, there's the Rockies, the Giants. Maybe those teams are interested. So if some team claims him, they also have to keep on the roster the whole season too. Or if they don't, and they DFA him like the Guardians did, he has to go through waivers. And then if he gets through waivers, the White Sox get the right to take him back, or the White Sox could, in theory, say no, but they won't. Or you could try to work out a trade and say, we'll give you something so we can keep Palette and send him to AAA. But that almost never happens with Rule 5 picks. Palette just was struggling with the control. Like, he had a really good month of April, but a guy in your bullpen who can only pitch when you're losing by a little bit or up by a little bit, not non-leverage time, and is having control issues. When he pitched on Saturday and he walked 3, he didn't give him any runs. I was kind of ready to say, like, okay, he just, his wife just had a kid. He was gone for 3 days on paternity leave, and you can maybe chalk that up to rust, but he's had control issues the entire month of May, honestly. And I think it was getting hard to find time for him to develop into, especially on a team that's winning and has other options. In 2021 with Trevor Stephan, this team was not winning, right? They kind of had a little more leeway to develop him. It was a different situation. So Trevor Stephan stuck for that reason, but look where he is, now. Unfortunately, Tommy John is not ever a guarantee of comebacks, but I really like Palette's arm. He throws hard. He's got a really big breaking ball. I like that. Really interesting pitcher. I wish they could have kept him, but the reality just is that this is a team that's competing right now. They're playing very well, and I don't think there was a real good spot for him at this point, given his control issues and role. And they brought up Logan Allen on Sunday, and bench coach Tony Anarich said that could give him a little bit of length, which seemed odd because Gavin gave him a ton of length on Friday, and Cecconi was fine, and Parker usually never has an issue giving them length, and they had some bullpen guys that were plenty rested at this point, given how well things went Friday, and you gave a couple guys days off Thursday because you didn't have a choice. So I didn't think it was the length thing. And then they talked about him being there available for a pocket of lefties against the Phillies, which the Phillies do have a lot of lefties in their lineup, right? They do have Schwarber and Harper and Bryson Stott. So all those guys in the lineup are lefties. Brandon Marsh, Justin Crawford, dating myself with that reference. So I guess that, but they went to Herron instead of Sabrowski. So it's like, why would you even consider Allen? I really think the only reason Allen was up here is because Franco Aleman can't be up yet. So he was optioned 11 days ago. As of Sunday, pitchers have to stay in the minors 15 days after they're optioned unless there's an injury. So Palette wasn't an injury. Cody Hoyer was just up too for taking Palette's spot with the paternity list, so he's not available to come back either. So the only real option was Logan Allen. Otherwise, it would have been Walters, who is still working through some things in AAA, coming off the injured list or the rehab of his lat, and then had that viral illness where he lost some strength and time. So he really wasn't ready to be an option either. So I think Allen was just the guy that kind of made sense in the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if Franco Aleman comes up in like 3 or 4 days when he's actually eligible to come back. And then you still have Walters and Hoyer. Maybe it'll be Hoyer too. Who knows? Hoyer was really good. But remember too, teams only have 5 options on a player. So you can option the player for 3 years, sometimes a 4th, but you can only do it 5 times within a single season of those years. So anytime they come up, that burns one, or anytime they get sent down, that burns one. So like Franco Aleman was sent down in spring training, that counts as an option. He was called up, and then he was sent back down. That counts as 2. So they can do that 3 more times without exposing him to waivers. When it gets past 5, then the player goes through waivers. So Hoyer's already been optioned once. Aleman's been optioned twice. You got to consider that too when you make these roster moves. Okay, let's quickly talk about the Nationals series. The Nationals are in second place in the NL East. It's not a good division. The Phillies have had to scrape and claw to get back to 500, and obviously they fell back under. The Nationals are in the same record as the Phillies. This is a very scrappy team, though, I will say. James Wood can hit the ball as well as anybody. C.J. Abrams is having a really great year. Dalen Lyle probably is a really good player not a lot of people know about. My guy, Joey Weimer. Love Joey Weimer. Really high BABIP. We'll see if he continues that. It's an interesting offense. I will say on the pitching side of things, not the best. So they're going to face Zach Littell, who's not been very good this year, on Monday, Memorial Day, against Tanner Bibee. For once, I think the Guardians are going to score runs for Tanner Bibee. I think the offense is due for a big game for Tanner. He's pitching better. He pitches well at home. And the best thing Zach Littell does is he doesn't walk guys. Other than that, he gets hit very hard. He doesn't strike anybody out. So I think that's a good position for this offense to be in. You get Miles Michaelis in this series. You do get Cade Cavalli, who's been really good this year, probably their best starting pitcher overall. Cade Cavalli, where is he at? I don't even see him on here. Has he pitched? I thought he's pitched enough innings. Oh, that's just the way, because I was looking at the bullpen. Shocking. Cade Cavalli has a 3.16 FIP, so he's been really good this year. This is an interesting team. This is a Nationals team that will be scrappy. Got to make sure you don't stub your toe. You just went out and dominated Detroit. You went into Philadelphia, a tough environment against three really good pitchers if you count Painter. You came away with some tough wins, so you don't want to let your guard down against a really good Nationals team, or not a really good, a very underrated Nationals team this week, especially with the Red Sox coming to town, who also aren't very good. All right, we'll be back on Tuesday to talk Game 1 of Guards Nationals. We'll preview Game 2. Jeff and I also have to talk about prospect ranking shakeups now that guys are off the team, or like Palette, or have graduated, things like that. I still want to talk about the All-Star game and how that's progressing, at least who's going to represent the Guardians, as well as the Futures game, because I think it'll be very interesting to see who represents the Guardians in the Futures game. We are getting closer. I know the College World Series starts this week, so Jeff's going to want to talk draft, so we'll have everything covered for you this week. So make sure you are hitting the bell on YouTube to get notified of all of our videos. You're auto-downloading on all your favorite audio platforms. The show stays in your feed. And subscribe. Go, Guardians, go.